you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd rather know last night, I was sent on a mission to do something for somebody, and it was a friend's house. I've known for many years, who actually has a son who's a son-in-law and son-and-daughter living right now in Chutzlars, living in America. They're doing a job here. They've got a purpose. They're not just there. They're working basically. I haven't seen him for a while. Actually, on the shul, he passed me, but there's somebody else in my area that looks a little bit like him, so I wasn't sure if it was him, so I didn't say hello, it happened all fast, and later on, when I stopped by the house, I saw it was actually him, I said hello, and I asked him, are you back? Are you back? Or are you going back to the UK? He said, we're just here for a couple more days, he wasn't really while. Then he made the mistake of asking me, so what is the Geulah? If he hadn't asked that question, I was going to pick up what I came for. I wanted to go home myself. It was Rosh Chodesh. I was interested in getting all discourse and discussion about redemption, things like that. But he made that mistake of asking the question, where's the Geulah? I smiled, right? And I said, do you really want to know? It's a lot closer than you think. The truth is that he's actually heard some of this material before, but everyone seems to forget it. Everyone seems to forget it. The source I'm going to read you tonight and discuss tonight is a source I've gone over so many times. It changed my life. It changed my kivun, it changed my direction. I saw it the first time, and I read it over again. And I must have read it 25 times at least before I was prepared to talk about it in public. What if I got it wrong? What if I got it wrong? What if I got it wrong? It's a major turning point of hashkafa. The amazing thing is even after I began to discuss it, and I started to travel a bit more and try to get that message out further and wider, I was in England, invited to speak at a shul, small shul, by a young rabbi who actually was Eretz Yisrael, and a very prominent rabbi who was very familiar with this material as well. And he said to me, he called me over, after this year, I think it was after this year, he called me over and he said to me that I've gone through the Leshem, that's the source of the material that we're reading to you from. The Leshem, his name is Rav Shlomo Eliashib. You're all familiar with Yosef Shalom Eliashib, who got a daughter who was nifter 10 years ago, 12, 50, a long time already. His grandfather was the great Kabbalist Rav Shlomo Eliashib, who was known as the Leshem because that's what his Sforim were called. Leshem Shavot Yachlamah, that's the third plate in the Ephod that the Kohen Gadol wore. He called it that because of the letters of his name inside of it, as he used to choose names in those days. And I'm sure there were more Kabbalah involved, like the stones gave off light, but that's what he called his Sforim, Leshem Shavot Yachlamah, and he became known as the Bahar Leshem. The Leshem, that's what they called him. And even how I got involved, it's also a major story of Shkola Pratis, but when I got to this point in the Sefer and I read through it, and it was unbelievable. So everybody who's gone to the Sefer should have seen it, should have known it, should have come across it. This person pulls me up, this rabbi, he pulls me because he says, I've gone to that Sefer, 2 or 3 times. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. Show me where that source is. Now, I've gone through 25, 30 times at this point, so I know exactly where that source is. This takes me 2 seconds to find the page. And I found the page. Right, and he looks at it and he goes, wow. It's like, wow. It's like, you're right. He saw it, but he didn't see it. But he said, how do you know it's happened before 6,000? So I turned two more pages over, and it shows you, it was a little vague, we'll get to it in a second, we said what I'm talking about. But he looks at it again, he said, look, exactly what you said. Amazing. But that was the end of that. No more questions. I don't know how much time passed, maybe about a year. I was living I think Eretz Yisrael at the time, and I went back for what was called the Age Up Conference. In those days, they still have it. I don't know because of Corona they haven't, but The AJEP conference is the Association of Jewish Professionals. It's like a think tank typical thing. They call together all the different organizations in the Kiruv, the Chokim, and they share all their methods and methodology and ideas to try to enhance the whole Kiruv process. It's a lot of fun. In the early days, it was actually paid almost nothing, stayed in the famous hotel, all of the inn. Food was fantastic, but each year got a little bit less and less and less, but still it was a lot of fun, and you learned a lot. This time I'd gone purely just to try to sell some books. I was no longer involved with an organization per se. I went back there, and he was there again. And he pulls me over and goes, I apologize. Where was that source again? I mean, I was this person, big Talmid Chacham who knows a lot and learned under one of the greatest in our generation before he passed away. And how could he not remember where it was? How could he not know what it was? I had to save it with me because I never travel without it for this very reason. Right? Went back up to my hotel room, got to see my bank showing me. He goes, well, I can't understand. It was like, there it is, right there. Right before my very eyes. And I walked away baffled. And I thought about it more and more. I couldn't understand, how is it possible, like such an important source? If it was only the Zohar that's being quoted here, then I can understand. The Zohar is vast. The Zohar is vague. We don't all understand how to interpret the Zohar. The Zohar can say something that's clearly allegorical, and for sure you know what it's talking about. Or very Kabbalistic, and you have to know Kabbalah to break it down, to explain it. 100%. The tricky part is when you're looking at something in the Zohar that seems to be very simple. It seems to be exactly the way it sounds. But you still don't know, is it what it means to say, or is it something behind it? You don't know. So therefore, it's possible, especially if it's found in a more esoteric part of the Zohar. Sounds a little bit contradictory, the Zohar itself is esoteric, but there are more esoteric parts inside the Zohar, right? And it seems like it's in there, buried, embedded in that section, so it can be missed. It can be missed, but even if you found it, and I would never have found the problem if I didn't have the lesson to show to me, then still you're going to wonder, is this what it means, what it's saying? The Zohar was written, officially was published in the 1300s, but it goes back to the Bayis Sheni, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, and who knows? We know, was a prophecy, with Kodesh, there's all this suffix, doubts surrounding it, so it's very possible that if you're going to quote it, you're not going to have much credibility. What changes everything? When the Leshem does it. When the Leshem quotes it. When a modern-day posting, a modern-day Geulah, a modern-day Kabbalist comes along and says, yeah, what the Zohar is saying over here, you can take it word for word, literally the way it stands. When he says it, it's a different story. And because he wrote it down in the safe and he spoke about it, so I now have the liberty of being able to re-quote it and present it to you and talk about it and write books based upon it and even make some kind of prediction, not for Moshiach's arrival, but for how history might unfold over the next little while because of the fact that this has to be true. So somebody who sells that, one of my sharing for many years and heard this material, and she wanted to find out for herself, so she actually she was going anyhow to Rabbi that's all, and she had a shot to ask, and while she was there, because Rabbi was the granddaughter of the Leshem. The granddaughter of the Leshem, okay? So she asked, he said, the Leshem says the following thing in the Sefer, can you take it to be true? And she simply said, if the Leshem said it, it's true. If the Leshem wrote it, you can take it as fact. And then she added, besides, my husband, with Chaim Knesset, right? That he's always talking about these things and saying it's, okay, enough is enough. Let me read the quote. It says the following thing. This is some background first of all. The Leshem, he starts off with a question. The question he starts off with is, are there going to be mitzvahs in Yemos HaMashiach? It's a machlokas rishonim. It's actually a machlokas even in the Gemara. Will the mitzvahs be relevant in Yemos HaMashiach? Why? Everything changes. There's no longer Yitzhahara anymore. Right? You have some poskim who say, no, the mitzvahs will no longer be applicable. They're only applicable, even though they're eternal. Right? And you have others that say, yes, they will be applicable. So Leshem comes along, and he's machri, as he always does. He comes along and he provides the solution. Says, of course they'll be applicable. So what about the sheet that say they won't be applicable? No, you understand. A mitzvah is a tzivui. Tzivui is something you have to be commanded to do. Right? When was the last time you commanded one of your children or your grandchildren, eat that lollipop? Now, I command you. That sugary cereal that you love so much you can't wait to get your spoon into, it's a mitzvah. I want, right now, eat that. Right? And there's no not doing it. When was the last time you did that? You don't have to do that. When was the last time you had to be commanded to breathe or to eat? To eat healthy, that's a different story. But to eat, no commandments. Why? Because we don't need to be commanded. It's something we do naturally. It's something we like to do. Not everybody. Some people have a difficult time eating, and they have to be commanded to protect their health, basically. But for the most part, the things that we do as a function of our own teva, our nature, is not a commandment. Because you know why? Because the whole point of the mitzvah is to refine us, to make us like a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Because as the Ramchal points out, Derech Hashem, Olam Haba, the pleasure of Olam Haba is being one with Hashem. But you can only be one with Hashem if you like Hashem. So we have mitzvahs in this world right now to make us like a Kodesh Baruch Hu as much as possible, so that the time comes and go to the next world, we'll be more like a Kodesh Baruch Hu and we can receive His light. So mitzvahs come to refine our actions. They come to create crises. That's what a mitzvah is. This is a crisis. That's what it is, it's a crisis. It's 7 o'clock. My alarm has gone off. Meetings in 15 minutes. Coming close, right? 15 minutes. And I gotta go. Now. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. You can sleep good. There's a minute at 8 o'clock. I checked before we left last night. Who are you talking to? There's a famous story of the Chafetz Chaim, who got up in the morning to daven Shachris early, right? Got up early, to daven Shachris, and he basically, he heard this voice that said, old man, after all these years, how much longer do you have to get up in the morning to daven? Surely you can sleep in this once, twice. And his answer was, if you're up this early, there's no reason why I shouldn't be up this early in the morning. And he had this actual dialogue with the Yetzer Hara. No, but that's what goes on inside all of us. I used to have a chavrusa when I was in Toronto. We went back to Toronto for a couple of years, and next to Toronto, the sun rises pretty early no matter what, all year round. It's early in the summertime, but in the wintertime it's still quite early. In Toronto, it can be 8 o'clock in the morning, still dark, or very close to it. And I would have a chavrusa, and it'd be cold, much colder, right? And you didn't go to bed early the night before, and you had a chavrusa, and last time he didn't show up, so maybe you don't have to show up this time, and it's like taking a little revenge over here, and he's just like, and your body's going sleep in, and you got to get up, The argument would go on so long inside my head, I had to get up because I just couldn't go back to sleep again anymore. I was like, yes, no, okay, forget it, get up right now. But it was late. Because he needs so hard right now. And in order to be able to give us schar in the world to come, we have to have struggle. We have to be confronted by the Yetzer Hara so we can overcome it. That's what mitzvahs do. Mitzvahs create a confrontation between the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. Because you're being asked to do something that's counterintuitive sometimes, counterinstinctual is the proper term. Take a look at the world. How many people do mitzvahs for the good of their health? How many people do mitzvahs because they enjoy doing it, just period? And if they do, the Gemara says, Gad mitzvah v'oseh ve'elo mitzvah v'oseh. Right? It's better to be commanded and do the mitzvah than do it because you simply enjoy doing it. Because that's your thing, not God's thing anymore. So we have to be commanded. In the Moshe Moshiach, the Gemara says clearly, because Baruch Hu takes the Yetzer Hara, brings it before the Tzaddikim, before the Rishayim. This is kind of overlap with El's mind. That's class. Not intentionally, but it fits it perfectly. Takes the Yetzer Hara and shechs it before the Tzaddikim and before the Rishayim. They both cry. The Gemara says the Tzaddikim cry and the Rishayim cry, but they cry for different reasons. Why they cry? Tzaddikim look and they see, wow, it's this towering thing, it's huge, it's monstrous. And they look at it and they say to themselves, how were we able to overcome this thing? It's amazing that we did. Oh, it's so scary to look at right now. Thank God we somehow survived it, because if I had it that big when I was going through life, I don't know if I would have been able to overcome it and do what has to be done. The Rishayim cried because it appears like a hair, like a little thread, thread of hair. And they're going, that's all it was? Just a little hair? That's what made me do this and there and that and there. It looked like a mountain during my life that I couldn't overcome. That's now. But in what the Moshiach, who shechs needs a heart, and that's it, it's over. No more bechira, no more struggles, no more challenges, no more Yitzhak at that point in time. So therefore, every mitzvah that we do now as a mitzvah becomes a way of life. So when it says there's no mitzvahs in Muslim Mashiach, it doesn't mean that because you stop putting on tefillin and stop doing mitzvahs and stop lighting shoving candles. No! But you won't have to be commanded to do it. You do it because it's the most natural thing. You'll want to do it. And that's the difference in the machlokas. Everybody agrees. Everybody agrees. The mitzvahs apply, not that they apply as mitzvahs, but the actions themselves are eternal. Tefillin, we won't be wearing black boxes and blah, blah, blah. But then again, the Zohar says when Yaakov Avinu took that stick and put it into the ground to multiply the sheep, right, when he's living with Lavan, he was yelled to the mitzvah of tefillin. So what do you do? Take a stick and wrap it on his arm? How do you do that? How was he yelled to? No, because tefillin is a concept. Shabbos candles are a concept. Shabbos is it's all concepts. There's different ways to teach these concepts. So Leshem is going through this discussion and making these points, and then he gets to the discussion about what's the Moshiach itself. And he talks about how, and I actually have a source here, he says the following thing. V'hinei, Yiskayim ha'teva v'chumrei v'kol ha'aviyos t'chiyas l'meisim shehu lo b'chos b'rabbi shenei b'achik kilkoyos. Is this the one I want? No. Sorry. Here. This is Acha'inin b'zeh. This is now the Hamshah, the continuation of this whole discussion I just mentioned before. He says, Acha'inin b'zeh hu kinei taluchos and haga asher b'yamos Moshiach. You have to know that at the beginning of Yemos Moshiach, there's going to be Hanhaga, the way of the world is going to be a mixture of miracle and nature. And the Rabbi brings down that nothing's really going to change. Moshiach is going to come, the Yitzhak B'Shech, but still, you get them when you go to shul, you have to prepare food. You have to take care of yourself. You have to do all the things you do right now, but there'll be no Yitzhak. But don't expect all of a sudden everything's just going to magically fall in the sky. All the Gemaras and imply things will plant one seed and the whole field will grow. Right? But that's what the Rambam says, and that's what he says over here. There's a mixture of teva and nace at the same time. This is a very important point. Hold on to that one. Okay? He was going to say, and that's the way it was in Mitzrayim too. The exact same way. It was bizarre. We just take it for granted. We take so much for granted. We just read the story. Okay, that's the way it was. Can't argue with that. Torah says so. No, but yet then you have to analyze what's going on. On one hand, you've got these fantastic miracles. You come home at the end of the day. They didn't start working till Rosh Hashanah. The Makos began in Nisim. They did not start working till the following 6 months later. So we're going to work. It wasn't as bad as it was before, because the Mitzrayim were preoccupied with all the disasters, but they were still going to work. They still had to punch the car, every single day. So they come home at the end of the day, sit down, make supper, and turn on the 11 o'clock news and see what's going on, in Mitzrayim. And there's blood in the river, and there's frogs all over the place, and there's killing, and it's like, there's coronavirus, and there's like this. But it's like one after the other. Their lives are normal. Everything is like natural, and yet these phenomenally big miracles are taking place at the same time because everything's right. Okay? He says, "Shagam Reishi Sechavas Geulah Hayateka Benisi." Even though there were miracles taking place in the very beginning, when in Kozer, Hinei Haya Adain Chomat Yisrael Zman B'Teva B'Chomer. So there was the backdrop. It was the opposite today. Today the backdrop is one of nature. The natural world. There's miracles taking place. For example, the fact that we got the state back in 1940, huge miracle. The fact that we've been surviving 70 years against all the odds, huge miracles. The fact that we've been able to develop the country in spite of all the obstacles and opposition, huge miracles. But the overall backdrop has been nature, a natural world. UN, politics, governments, everything. Even the way we got the state back was through a vote of nations, right? There's a backdrop of Teva, but the miracles are taking, but there was the opposite. There the backdrop was miracles, because you had the Makos, you got Kodesh Baruch Hu talking to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu talking to the Jewish people, and talking to Parashat, and this, that's the backdrop, but every single day they came home, and what's for supper? Well, we have to make it. You have to wash diapers. And it goes on to say, because the main change that had to happen to the Jewish people to make it that everything would change eventually did not take place until Mount Sinai, until the giving of Torah. Only then were the Jewish people, momentarily, it didn't last very long, but only then were the Jewish people able to reverse the Chet of Adam Rishon and return the world back from physicality, back to spirituality, back to Ruchnis once again, when they said Nasa and Nishma. And at that point in time, if everything stayed the way it was, that was the beginning of Moshiach, and then the whole world, the whole Hanahagah would have been absolutely miraculous. Okay? So go ahead and say, okay? The Zohar talks about this as well. גם שהנהגה עמהם בניסים הגדולים כל זה, הם עצמם היו עדיין לפי הטבע לגמרי. Even though there's big miracles, they themselves were all natural. וכן יהיה בהביאים הראשונים, it was Moshiach. And since you're on the topic, let me point out to you that this is exactly the way it's going to be at the beginning of Yom Moshiach. The exact same way, right? Sheyad Geulah v'Hagah b'nisim gedolim. There'll be fantastically big miracles taking place in the world, and specifically for the Jewish people, okay? In Hosea, Teva, Mishmeshes, Gamke, but nonetheless, Teva will be the order, will be the natural order, okay? But the Jews, the cool Jewish people, they'll still remain very gashmi, very physical. Why is this so important? Why is this point make a difference? I mean, it's instructive in terms of what it was like in Mitzrayim, but we don't think about it. We don't put ourselves back into the shoes. We're like people who walk into a movie at the end and think the whole movie has to do with the end. It's like you walk in, you sit down, the last 5 minutes, and the hero is getting rid of all the bad guys, and everything's falling into place, and you figure that's the whole thing. And no, that's not the way it was. That's just the end. We came to the good part. But there was a whole movie before that. There was a whole consciousness before that. 4/5 died in Makas Choshech. Not in the first plague, not in the second plague, Makas Choshech. So close to the end. There was only one more market to go through, only one more market that was going to open the door of Mitzrayim and let the Jewish people go out. One more, that's it. Just hang it. You hung in there for 7, right? You hung in there for 8. Just one more. And then you'll see that Geulah that Moshe Rabbeinu promised us on behalf of Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to happen in your lifetime. You'll go out. 12 million out of 15 million people couldn't hang on. And why not? Why not? Well, the Medrash brings down the fact that they were afraid they would lose their positions. They wanted to remain Mitzrayim, where they could control, because now anyhow Egypt was destroyed, so they could take over. They built it. There's all kinds of reasons, but ultimately speaking, they all pale. If you think this is God bringing you out, you see it happening. You see the miracles. This is the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and He's told you everybody has to go. It doesn't make a difference. Look, even Dasan Bavirim left. Weird. And the Erev, weird. And you should know there are a lot more Erev than they were Jews. And the Erev, as bad as they were, at the end, at the beginning, they weren't so bad. The Arizal brings down they were sincere converts. Moshe converted them because they really believed they could fit in. They lost it along the way. But They all left. What about the other 12 million? And this is the problem right here. This is the reason why. Because it was a combination of miracle and teretz. It's like you doubt. You're not sure. People don't realize Moshe Rabbeinu was walking the face of the earth for 79 years. The Gemara says that Miriam, at the age of 6, convinced her father to take back his wife, Yocheved, have another child. He's going to be the Moshiach. And when he was born, and he gave off this fantastic light called the Or HaGanuz, Amram came and he kissed her on the head and said, "You're right. You're a prophetess. You saw you saw what was going to happen." And then they would put him in the put him in the basket of the river, give him a tap on the head. Now what's your prophecy? She never gave up. She stood by the river. She watched because she knew he was the Moshiach at that time, and hopefully for all of history. And he is, by the way, for all of history. He comes back in every generation, and the final redemption will be through Moshe Rabbeinu. Not the body of Moshe Rabbeinu, but the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's your dual. That's accepted. So he's definitely, not just for that generation, but for all generations. Ours too. Finish the job, we start. And she saw it. But for 79 years he had to wait. First he grows up in the house of Paro, ridiculous, absolutely bizarre and ridiculous, a maze beyond comprehension. How, it reminds me very much of what goes on in this country. How is it possible that we have a government with people who literally have sworn to kill us and wipe us off the face of the earth are sitting there receiving money that's supposed to go to us instead to make votes against our government? How is it possible? Well, here's a precedent. There's Moshe Rabbeinu, a Jew, a known Jew, growing up in the house of Paro. Right there. Does it make sense? No. But it happened. A nace. Nace Hashem Haisa Zos, he with us name. It's got to be from Kosh Baruch Hu, because this is wondrous and this is wondrous. So, he grows up, but he sees one of the Egyptians killing a fellow Jew, he's beating him, he's not killing him, he's beating him, he's about to kill him, he wants to kill him, and it doesn't appear. Now you wonder if Moshe should just back off and do anyhow, because until they die, they are a pain in the neck. Worse. But Moshe steps in, he kills the Mitzri with Hashem, doesn't hit him, kills him, drops dead. Beautiful story there too, by the way. That's another time to do with Geulah. We'll talk about that right now. But that's what Moshe does. Moshe is forced to flee for his life. He runs away. He goes to a place called Cush. He becomes king for a while. He actually is engaged to the king's daughter. They never actually go through the marriage, but he's supposed to, eventually leaves. He sets up the place. It's running smoothly. He moves on to Midian. Yisrael recognizes his face in the post office. Right? Puts him into a pit for 10 years because he's a wanted man. Yisrael knows that Paro wants to kill him. He wants this person. So therefore he puts him into a pit. He figures if he can survive, then he's special. A little birdie comes in and feeds him, called Tzipora. Right? Every day she feeds Moshe Rabbeinu. And you say, wow, this guy survived for 10 years. Never caught on. Eventually they got married. Oh, you can't believe what's going on over here. I won't explain how, but just tell you, Yisrael is a reincarnation of Cain. Moshe is a reincarnation of Hevel. Cain killed Hevel because Hevel had 2 twin sisters and Cain only had 1. In those days you married your sister, so you had to get along with your sisters for sure, okay? And you married your sister, and he only had 1 sister, he had 1 wife as opposed to 2, so therefore he killed Hevel for the second one. And Yisrael is a reincarnation, and Tzipora is the reincarnation of the sister that Cain killed Hevel over. So when Yisrael gave Moshe Tzipora, he was doing tikkun for Cain, giving back the twin sister he took way back at the beginning. That's how convoluted, how incredible Jewish history is, how world history is basically. And why you can't just look at the actors walking across the stage and doing their thing. Mr. Bennett has no idea, right, or any of these people, Lieberman, all these people in power today, as far as they're just the next politicians in line. But we're living in a very, very precarious period of history, a very biblical period of history. At the end of days, you don't want to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You don't want to be the person doing the wrong thing at the wrong time now, because it may not just be you. You may be a Geulah of somebody going back a long time who did exactly things like this, and you're supposed to fix it up, and you're doing the exact opposite. It's a very difficult time to just simply do politics, because you see what happens. Yisro, Moshe, it's all going through history. Aaron. You know why Aaron is called Aaron? Because he has the name Haran inside his name. Because Aaron is a Geulah of Haran. Who is Haran? That's the brother of Abraham. Abraham jumps in the fire, goes to the fire, he survives. Haran says, well, if he survives, I'll do it, and I'll prove my faith to God. And God, that doesn't work that way. You have to first believe, and then the miracle happens, not the miracle. Right? So he jumps in and he dies because he was relying upon a miracle. Not the same thing. So the Rizal brings down by Har Sinai, when we did the golden calf, even though Aaron was completely L'Shem Shemayim, by going ahead and trying to stall the boat, he was supposed to die by Chur instead. Aaron was supposed to give up his life instead at this whole episode, and that would have been Haran's tikkun. I can go on the whole night like this. You cannot believe where all this goes and who's what, and people in government's time, and this and the Tanayim, and then we lost track today. But even in the Arizal's time, in the 1500s, he was still talking about these things, and still pointing out to people who they were from previous lifetimes. You have to be very careful about what you do and who you are, because you have no idea. If you take a role of prominence, probably you have a prominent role going back a long time. But that's not the point over here. That's the issue right now. Mir saw for 79 years, and you see, their miracles happened the whole way through. Rashi brings down, they came to kill Moshe. They took Moshe. It wasn't like he just ran away. They captured him. He was Chayav Misa. They wanted to kill him. What happened? They put his neck on the chopping block. The executioner took the sword. Boom! But it broke. Because at that moment in time, somehow, Moshe's neck turned into marble. So we look at that and say to ourselves, really? Mamish? Or was it more like those little toy swords we buy our kids, the plastic ones, the dead meat was like, and he was trying to use that to get not working. No, I turned to marble. Esav goes to bite Yaakov's neck. And we meet, right? And he loses all of his teeth. He has to get dentures after. Because his neck turns to marble. How does it happen? It's a midrash. Midrash, we have it all backwards. Now Miriam, she saw it the whole way through. And then finally he shows up and you see, and still it's not over yet. Moshiach, we're going to go out. You have to believe. He makes miracles, right? And we're with you. We're with you 100%. And Moshe goes and Paro increases the slavery. It's so confusing that even Moshe Rabbeinu himself asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what's going on? It's Pshat. Ever since you sent me, it just got worse and worse. And this is the part that always blows me away. What you expect, Hashem is always such a Baal Rachamim. You expect him to say to Moshe, I hear where you're coming from. I understand, it's not easy. I realize I told you wouldn't succeed, but I never told you fail like this. I understand, but don't worry, it's okay, it's all going to work out. He doesn't say it to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's like the Gemara says, the Krish Baruch Hu says, Chava, they don't make him like they used to make him. That's the Gemara. They don't make him like they used to make him. Alam Avim, I promise in the land, he has to bury his wife, and he has to buy the kever that belongs to him at top dollar from a Russia. And Yitzchak, with the wells, he digs one, they fill it up. There's another one, they fill it up. There's another, and he's got a son, Asa, complain? No. Yaakov Avinu, he's on the run, his entire life came up. He finally settles down in Parashat Vayeshev. Finally settles down. And he has to get up again all over again. Down to Mitzrayim. Then it was over. Complain now. They didn't even see Geulah taking place. You're watching the Geulah take place before your very eyes, Moshe Rabbeinu, and you're questioning and asking me my name? Right? Wrong. All then what? Man, we know it's going to happen because we've read the story before. Some people watch the movie. Right? We know how it's going to unfold, right? So we're okay. We know this is going to pass. It's only a few psukim anyhow. For them it's a bunch of years and months, but we know, but Moshe Rabbeinu is like watching, how is this the Geulah? Well, it is the Geulah. That's what Kosh Baruch Hu is saying. You should have known this, he says to Moshe Rabbeinu. I can accept a lot of things, a lot of complaints. There's a lot of times Moshe Rabbeinu said, they say to his Baruch Hu said, I hear it, I understand, but not this. I told you this is redemption, I told you this is redemption. How it happens, how it works out, forget about the confusion. If I say it's happening, and you have to go with it. And even if it looks terrible, it's bad, it's the exact opposite of what you think it's supposed to be, it doesn't make a difference. If I tell you it's happening. So there's no questions. Avram didn't ask, Yitzchak didn't ask, yet they all understood it was all part of the process. All the bad stuff is all part of the process. And finally, the 15th of Nisan, we all go out there, it all starts to fall into place. We've not been to the whole job. And you want to know if we're living in the Moshiach right now? People want to know, where's the Geulah? We're staying by the front door for 10, 15 minutes having this discussion, just by the front door over here. And you're asking me, where is the Geulah? You're standing literally, your 2 feet are in the middle of it, at the end of it, not even the middle, a long time ago. The end of it. And you want to know where it is? Tell me about it. Well, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know it's the end of it? Well, aside from some of the money we spoke about last time, and got a little chance to speak about more in the future, but because of this. This is a game changer. This changes the whole story. It rewrites our whole shot on the end of days. And the amazing thing is that it's so important and it's so crucial that everybody should know this. Everyone should be speaking about it. Everyone should be taught this. Everyone should be thinking about it every single day. And almost nobody does. Almost nobody. So some people would like to say, well, that's the proof. It's not true. Because if it was true, wouldn't we all be speaking about that? Wouldn't it all be on the tip of our tongues? Are you kidding? No way, no how. Well, how do I know that? Because the result goes down. And unfortunately, whatever, but I wrote a book called Drowning Pshat. Drowning in Pshat. What's Pshat? Pshat is the simplest, most obvious, not complicated, but simplest, most obvious explanation of something, but you can drown in it sometimes. Meaning that you can think that's all there is. We have to ask the question how so many people could get stuck in Europe. I don't just mean in the 1930s, I mean going back all the way for hundreds of years even. And by the Romans, but why is it the last person really to leave exile on time and survive it pretty much was Yaakov Avinu. The last one. He was in exile for 36 years altogether. Okay, it was all said and done. He's living by 11 for 20 years. And one day he picks up and boom, he's gone. Doesn't even say goodbye. Because every single day, he's living for redemption. It's his whole mindset is redemption. He's not settling in and investing in the place that he is. He's there because that's where he has to be to do his job. And he's waiting for God to tell him every single day for 20 years, when can I go? It's like, my mother used to take me shopping with her when I was a little kid. It was a nightmare for both of us in the end. I had to be bribed, and the bribes were worth it sometimes. But I remember there was one trip we went to New York. New York, right? And it's like this high, that's all, a little higher, okay? And she dragged me from place to 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 place. I don't even know what she did actually, quite frankly, but I kept the entire time. I kept, literally wanting to sit down, go someplace else. When is it over? Every single second I was invested in, when is this thing going to end? When is this nightmare going to be over for me? She just the opposite for her. She doesn't enjoy herself except for me. That mentality is how we're supposed to live in exile, even in Eretz Yisrael. But kol v'chomer in the diaspora, chutzlines. That's how Yaakov lived. Everybody else just settles down and invests and lose perspective in the situation. Over the last 40, 50 years, the rabbis from the pulpits, from the bimas, from the shtenders, wherever they stood to speak, every Shabbos should have been telling people, if not really, listen folks, we're settling down for the time being, but you have to know, as a nation, historically, everywhere we go, the exile comes to an end at some point. We always get caught off guard. We're always surprised. Do yourself a favor. Keep one foot in and one foot out. Doesn't make a difference how big and beautiful you built the yeshiva and the Beit Knesset, and how just, Beryl Wine talks about how he was sitting before he made it Aliyah to Israel. He was still about a shul. And they sat down with a contract who was going to put skylights into the renovations of the shul. And they flight to Israel. So it's worth it. Right? And they're asking the committee, well, which ones do you want? The ones that last 200 years, 100 years, or the ones that last 200 years? And he's thinking to himself, what are we talking about up here? We're living in America. 100 years, we're not going to be for that long. It's not an issue for us. What do we do? You can't build like that. So he goes on to say the following thing. It's a continuation of what we said before. He says, he's talking about the Chis and Mesim a bit. He says, "V'hinei l'chor hayad niru l'mar d'zman ichor shel kol osin shemusoi kodem atechiyah lo hiyeh shuv b'kulam." He's talking about the Chis and Mesim, resurrection of the dead. They're basically three periods of history. There's history since Ma'aseh Bereshis, not including Gan Eden before the Chet. There's history before Ma'aseh Bereshis. That takes us into Yom Moshiach. Yom Moshiach will go until 6,000. That's the other question you asked me yesterday. Is this 6,000 business not fixed, or is that open-ended? Meaning, like, can this go on for 1,000 years, or is that's like fixed? 6,000 fixed, very fixed. So until 6,000 begins Olam Haba, the first stage of the Ramchal points out, Olam Nefashos, where the souls get repaired, where they're damaged, right? But within the period of time called the Moshiach, there are two periods. One is just the Moshiach itself, which includes Kibbutz Galus, then gathering the exiles, includes Moshiach coming and getting the world all in order, enjoying the period of time without the Zohar, and then finally the last stage is called the Chis Mesim until 6,000. The Chis Mesim is the resurrection of the dead. It's one of the 15 principles of faith. You have to believe the Chis Mesim. The Gemara says you can believe in everything else, and you don't believe the Chis Mesim. Ein lehem chelek olam haba. You have to believe the Chis Mesim. The Lashon explains why, but it's a fundamental. The Chis Mesim, resurrection of the dead. What is it? Well, basically, it's your body being recreated anew. Not Geulah. Geulah is your body is born normally from a mother, right? Like every little baby, and your soul comes back from the previous life into that new body. Everybody here has been here probably dozens of times. That's why we're all so tired.
Results full. Results is full time.
No. Big misconception.
Yeah.
You can have, if a person's a Rasha, they can reincarnate up to 4 times, and then they get wiped away. But it says that anybody else, it can be even 1,000 times. Even 1,000 times. Certainly hundreds of times. And you just keep going until history runs out of time, basically. But for sure, there's nobody here that hears it for the first time. We're all Geulah. So then why do you need to Chis Mesim? Because, you see, we're still physical. Even though we reincarnate, same skin that I had in my previous body, not the same skin itself, but same texture, same physical properties, right? It's the same people all the way through, just different generations with different names and different parents. But I can't go to the world to come like this. The world to come is spiritual. This is too physical. Adam Rishon, when he was first created, was not created like this. This is what happened because of the chet of the Eitz Hadas Tov and Ra. In order to go to the world to come, you have to go back to what he was before the chet, which means to go back to having skin made from light. Not physical skin like this. This is called the skin of the snake. It's a snake, you got to do this and change ourselves. But we get back skin of light. If Adam Arisha was in the room today, you wouldn't see him. He'd be so ruchani. Your eyes wouldn't be able to perceive him. And that's why everybody has to go back before 6,000, so then you can go to the world to come. How do you get there? You just take an elevator, right? Someone just beams you up or something like that. It was like, how do you get there? Well, the world evolves. The entire world gets elevated with you inside of it. The whole world goes up. It becomes more ruchani. It goes back to what it was before the chet of Adam Arisha. What would have happened if Sinai, the Jewish people, had not got involved, at least not they'd stopped the golden calf. They didn't. But that's the way it is. So the Chis Mason is that period of time at the end of the Yemos Moshiach. Now the Leshem wants to know the following thing. How does it work? Right? Do we all drop dead at the same time? Everyone who's living, obviously people are dead. You don't have to worry about things like that. What about people living? 12 o'clock, midnight, the Chis Mason, boom, we're all gone. And then what? We all rot in the ground? And then after that they'll come back? How does it work? So he says, right, in the beginning, it would seem that the time that we spend in the ground decomposing in order to be recreated once again like Adam before the Chet, right, will not be the same for everybody. The amount of time you spend in the ground to reincarnate, to decompose in order to come back in a new body, created from scratch, should not be the same for everybody. So that's the way it would seem to be. Everybody according to their spirituality, because the whole point of decomposing the ground is part of your tikkun for the gashmis. The more gashmi you are, the more time you have to decompose in the ground. That's why you hear these stories about tzaddikim who were dug up 100 years later, 20 years later, their bodies were still intact. I don't know how accurate that was, but it certainly theoretically makes sense. Because if they live their life free of gashmis, why should they decompose in the end? That's what it's for, And that's going to be, dependent upon where you're holding in this world right now. The more material you are, the more time you spend in the ground. That's what it says. Okay? According to Zohar elsewhere, shekasut b'Zohar haniskar v'yikam along miyad. It says everyone gets up immediately. No, it seems that at the end they were all going to decompose in the ground for the same amount of time. It doesn't make a difference where you were holding. That's good news, right? Although I'm not sure you're conscious of this anyhow, but at least, it's not going to be like an onish. We're not finished yet. He goes, okay? There's a catch. Yes. The amount of time that everyone spends in the ground is the same. Yes. The decomposition period of time is the same for everybody. But what changes is the day you're going to die. And therefore the day you resurrect. So everyone spends, let's say, 6 months in the ground. But if you die this year, right, assuming it's the Chis Nisim already, you come back 6 months later. If you die 5 years from now, there'll be people coming back, people coming back already, who resurrected, right, while you are still not resurrected. So you look at your window, I talk about keeping up with the Schwartzes, okay? You look at your window, and you'll see them flying around like angels. They look like angels. Everybody who came back with the Chizim will look like angels. And you look, this body of mine is so heavy. It weighs, you take the bus, and they just fly. Because they've already resurrected, they come back. He says, therefore, because of the fact that the day of death is different, likewise the day of resurrection will also be different. Like anybody who purified themselves, rectified themselves in this lifetime, they will die earlier and they will come back earlier. That's what he says. This is all not incidental, but it's like we're moving towards the climax. This is just a informational point along the way. Okay? So he says, because the whole point of death at that time will be, right? The point of dying then will only be to dissolve the physicality so we can get back spiritual. To transform your body. Okay? That's what it's saying. to make you brand new, to bring you back and make you brand new. Okay. Now here it says, so in conclusion, the amount of time from the time of death until the time of resurrection is the same for everybody. Yes. But the time of death would not be the same for everybody. You follow? Everyone gets that difference? Okay? It says, so now, where you might have had, let's say, a young period of time, right, where, let's say everyone died at the same time, and everybody spends the same amount of time in the ground, and that time is six months, so the entire period of Techiyas Hameisim is 6 months. Because we're all dying at the same time, we're all coming back at the same time, and all this is enough time to decompose. But the moment you say that the day of death is going to vary from person to person, now the period expands. It gets longer. Okay? So he says, first of all, he said, Tzaddikim will come back first. Right? And he said there'll be many, the period of time will be very long. Tzaddikim Hashem Mesu Kavar, hey, the people who already died, Tzaddikim who died in the past and no longer living today, they of course will come back right away because they've already decomposed anyhow. Or they've already gone through the tikkun. Should take of Achor Arba Shel Kibbutz Galuyos. And it will occur after 40 years from Kibbutz Galuyos. Yeah, you have to appreciate the first time I read this, and I'm going through this, and I'm thinking to myself, I have no idea what this means. It's the first, until now, before I got to this point where I saw this material, I had learned the Ramchal, Derech Hashem, who speaks about Techiyas Hameisim. And Derech Hashem, Techiyas Hameisim takes place in year 7,000, already in the world to come, which makes sense. Because you go to the world to come, the body and soul get separated, the body gets fixed up, the soul gets fixed up, you get brought back together again in 7,000 for some kind of Techiyas Hameisim, not the physicals are not really Techiyas Hameisim, but kind of a Techiyas Hameisim at 7,000, the judgment, the whole thing. That was my understanding. Then I get these words the first time, going back 25 so many years, right? He says, 40 years from Kibbutz Galuyos. Kibbutz Galuyos. That's not in Olam Haba. That's not an Olam Haba. There's no Kibbutz Galuyos in Olam Haba. There's not even Kibbutz Galuyos in Techiyas Hameisim. Right? So what are we talking about? He says, he goes on to say, that's when the first Techiyah is going to begin. Really? After 40 years from Kibbutz Galuyos? Like we're in Kibbutz Galuyos. The Torah talks about Kibbutz Galuyos. We're waiting for the end of Kibbutz Galuyos. We're here, all of us right now, we are Galuyos that we've been gathered in. We came from Chutz La'aretz, different places. They're still coming, right? It's been going on for hundreds of years since the Geulah first woke up. Well, he didn't wake up; he was always up. But the Zohar told him the 5500 was the time to begin the process, and he did. And here we are today as part of the hemshech of that process, and that's the final stage before Moshiach. So the Techiyas Hameisim begins from 40 years after Kibbutz Galuyos. Well, first of all, it's been going for a long time. What do you mean after? Okay, but that changes everything. He doesn't say, adds another very important detail, and he says, and on top of all that, the Az Yushach Zman Kol Techiyas Ad Techiyah Achrona Hemshech, drum roll please, right? It's going to last a long time, this period of Techiyas Hameisim, post-Moshiach. Post-Moshiach. There's no need for Moshiach and Techiyas Hameisim. So it's all fixed up. It's useless. Techiyas Hameisim is just like the great rectification of mankind that's still surviving in preparation for the world to come. Moshiach has long gone, done his thing. 40 years after Kibbutz Galuyos, so this period's going to last how long? He says, according to the Geulah, 210 years. According to Yitzchak, 214 years. Moshiach, whoa! Throwing things up in the air, celebrating, etc. Thank you. Why? Isn't this a calculation from Mashiach's arrival? No, it's not a calculation from Mashiach's arrival. We didn't calculate Mashiach's to come. I have no idea how to even do that. I know when it says you can do it, I know when it tells you if you understand this, you'll be able to do it, but I have no idea how to use the information. This very day, I have no idea how to calculate. I'd like to know, I think, okay? But probably still the beans, so probably I don't know, right? But it's not a calculation from Mashiach's arrival. But it is a calculation from Mashiach's end, meaning of his tafki. So it's like someone says to you, what time is Shlomo going to show up? I need to know what time to put the food on. And you say, I have no idea. He's caught in traffic somewhere. But I know one thing for sure, he has to leave by 7. That's for sure. He told me. He's got a shear at 8 o'clock at night, takes him half an hour to get home. He must leave by 7 to be on time. And he's always on time. So I don't know when to tell you to put the steaks on the barbecue or whatever you're going to do, but I know one thing for sure. Whatever you're going to give him, it has to be ready to be eaten at least by 6:30, if not earlier. Because by 7 he's out of here. That's a fact. As much of a fact can be in advance. And that even is a little bit tricky because human beings are fallible, there's all kinds of unknowns. But this is God. We're dealing with God. And the Zohar says that within 210 years, right, to 214 years, that's the period of Tichis Amesim, and Moshiach has to have been come and done his thing and be finished by then. Finished. So if I'm reading this to you 500 years ago, it'd be interesting, but that's all. Because 210 years to 214 what's 3 years between, a lot actually in history, but nonetheless, there's still 500 years left to go. 500 years left to go, it could be anywhere in that 500. If it's 1,000 years ago, right? Rabbi he knew the Zohar. He wrote the Zohar. People, Moshe who published it, they knew this information, but they couldn't do anything with it because they still had 1,000 years left to go, or 1,500 years left to go, or 500 years left to go. When did everything change? In 1986, according to Rabbi Yitzchak, and 1990, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's 210 years at the Chis Amesim, no Moshiach, he's gone, followed from 40 years of Kibbutz Geulah. So 210 plus 40 is 250. Once you're inside the 250 range of years, there's nothing else left. By definition, you have to be in the Moshe Mashiach. You have to be. Or 214, even earlier, according to Yitzchak, because he says 214 plus the 40. He agrees with the 40, but he says 214. It's based upon Psukim, in Kabbalah, things like that. It's right in the Zohar, Medrash Ne'elam, that's where it comes from. And as of 1986, you're at the 254 point, which means, by definition, there's no time left. You're now in the 40 years of the Kibbutz Geulah, you must have a sheer period of time, and in 40 years' time, the Chis Amesim has to begin. When I first did this, it was like 25, 30 years left. Now we're down to 4 to 8 years. In 4 years' time, it's going to be 5786, as of this Rosh Hashanah was Rosh Hashanah. 4 years. From 5782 to 5786, that's, according to Yitzchak, that's when the 40 years ends. Because it begins in 1986, which is 5746. 40 years is 5786. That's the 40 years of Kibbutz Geulah, which includes Moshiach.
1996 of 6,000 years?
No, on the Goyish calendar. 5746.
I'm confused.
5746. I just used because that's the common date we use. 5746 corresponds to 1986. So as of 5746, that would begin the 40 years that would end in 5786, which is 4 years from now, when according to Yitzchak, the Chis Amesim has to begin. According to Yehuda, the period would begin in 1990. right? And last 40 years till 5750, till 90, when the 210 years is going to begin. Okay? 48 years. When Rabbi was asked, can we take this literally? She said, yes. If the Leshem said it, it's literal. You can't, some can argue all they want. I don't hold to that. I don't believe it. Who knows what he's talking about? Who knows what he meant? It's the Zohar. Fine, we'll say it. A person can argue and say whatever they want. They can have, I mean, you know what cognitive dissonance is, right? You heard the term cognitive dissonance? Geulah. I mean, it's everywhere. And all over the place, to do with health, and to do with the government, and to do with this thing, to do with that thing, and the virus, and the vaccine. It's we live with so much cognitive dissonance. When people hear something that goes against their known reality that they refuse to give up, they will ignore the other side, no matter how truthful it is. Amen. That's how 6 million people, 13 million people in Europe get stuck. That's how people in Buffalo get stuck. We make a big deal about Talmud Bavli and the obvious Surah and Papadisa and all that, but the Zohar says that after the miracle of Mordechai and Esther and Purim, it says the wellsprings of Chachma opened up in Shemayim to give us the light we require to bring the redemption then, now. And Ezra Sofer, you can't talk against him, but he stayed in godless because his Rabbi was still there. So he stayed to learn because he understood, and the Zohar says those wellsprings closed up and they will not open again until the final generation. Because we blew it. Because we had the opportunity. Cyrus, Koresh, he says to the Jewish people, I'm giving you permission to go back and to build the base of Mikdash. It's bizarre. It doesn't make sense. It shouldn't happen. And the Persian Babel, they destroyed the base of Mikdash because the base of Mikdash was antithetical to the rest of the world. And a Persian king comes along, go ahead, build it. Well, I care. Why do? And you should. And 42,000 people show up. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, according to the Geulah, according to the Ramchal, that's it, folks. Now you have to face Haman. 18 more years. That was 52 years. That could have been Achishem. That's what it was supposed to be. When Koresh said, the Geulah calls him Moshiach ben Yosef. Well, he's not really, but he acts like it kind of in that position. Kodesh Baruch Hu has hardly shlich l'makom. Kodesh Baruch Hu has many messengers. 42,000 people show up. They're all the rest of the thing, home running, doing all their doing. And the wellsprings close up. Maybe learn? Maybe change things? I don't know. When I take it all into account, and I put it all together, and even for myself, I've been over this material so many times. I've taught it, probably why the room is only half empty, or half full, as we look at it. People, how many times do you hear this stuff? And yet every time I give it over, it just gets stronger in me. I just get more chizuk. I just get built up by it. I just get more of a believer. Or else we get frustrated too. Because you got this information, this life-saving information that a Jewish Zohar you must learn. Learn! Take a look at the past. That's how I talk to you. We don't have prophets today. But I left behind so many clues and so many sources and so many people and so many... Just like, listen, push away the cognitive dissonance. Forget about the rest of the world.